Hello, my friends. Hello, and welcome once again to the trashy Vaughn Manor, where Roger and I have returned to talk trash on the wasted weekend. So, this is Sunday, and it is the weekend still. It's the wasted weekend. CriminOlly has dubbed this weekend the wasted weekend, where we all sit around and read trash. And this is an offshoot of CriminOlly's great booktube event, Garbaugust. Garbaugust, the greatest reading event of all time, which has been going on for a couple of years now, which is, dedicated to reading trash. Fiction that is considered trash. Books that are considered trash by society. Society considers certain books trash. And certain members of society consider certain books trash. And it's an interesting thing, how there are certain books that are just considered trash, and how that could the trash status of certain books can change over time. And whenever Garbaugust rolls around, or in this case, the wasted weekend, I start thinking about trash. I am, like I said, halfway through the wasted weekend. I read Warrior of Larn yesterday. This is the trashy book I read yesterday. Warrior of Larn by Gardner F. Fox, which is basically an Edgar Rice Burroughs ripoff novel, basically. But it was a lot of fun. I read that yesterday. And today I'm reading Brack the Barbarian. Brack the Barbarian. Sword and Sorcery. Sword and Sorcery is very much considered trash still by society. Now, I remember when Garbaugust first arrived on the scene, when CriminOlly first created Garbaugust, he got some pushback. There were some people that were really upset about the whole thing. The whole idea of calling books trash, calling certain books trash. Like, oh my God, how can you consider my paranormal frog romance book trash? Frog romance is not trash. No, ghost frogs falling in love. What's wrong with that? That's great. How dare you could call it trash? Well, CriminOlly was very careful when he spoke about this, and he talked about this several times about what he was talking about when he was talking about trashy fiction, and how it didn't mean the books were bad. It just means that this is what society kind of considers these books to be, by and large. And he was very careful about that. And yet it seemed like a lot of people just were not listening to the words that CriminOlly was actually saying. Ollie was saying things, and people were not listening and still were getting upset. I don't know if that still happens, but I remember that from when Garbaugust first arrived. I guess nobody likes to hear that what they read is trash. And this is understandable. I've heard this. I remember one person actually saying to me, you seem like a smart guy. Why do you read such garbage? I actually got that. But here's the thing. If you like any kind of genre fiction at all, there's somebody who thinks it's trash. I mean, even those of us who like genre fiction, we see certain books and we look at the covers and what the book's about, and we say to ourselves, wow, that looks like garbage. I would never read trash like that. But, of course, that's us being judgmental. I mean, the book could be a master. I mean, it's probably not a masterpiece, but it could be a masterpiece, My feeling is, and I think a lot of people on BookTube feel this way, it doesn't really matter what you read. It's okay to read whatever you read, even if other people think it's trash. Because a lot of times, like I said, if you are reading any kind of genre fiction at all, any kind, somebody thinks it's trash. probably, or maybe a lot of people think it's trash, and it's kind of always been that way. I mean, I think back to the pulp era, when this is a reprint of The Spider. The pulp era, when we got really awesome pulps like this, Spider pulp. This book has the story Master of the Night Demons in it. Master of the Night Demons. That sounds amazing. So, I mean, this was, back in the olden days in the 1920s and 30s, we had pulps like this. And they were considered, by and large, by society trash. But at the same time, huge readership of these. And one of my favorites was Weird Tales. This is a reprint of some Weird Tales stories. Fantasy and horror. Two genres which, have long been considered, trash. Just trash. Even though there's some great writing that happens in fantasy and horror. And it's kind of gone on that way with people being judgmental. When science fiction first came on the scene, science fiction is, I guess, one of the more respectable genres. When it first came on the scene and this is from the 50s. And I just look at this and I just think this looks amazing. When was this? This is September 1951. Day of the Moron by H. Beam Piper. I look at this and I just think that's amazing. I want to read it right now. But a lot of people looked at this and just considered it garbage. They just considered it trash. And it's interesting. Now, this can change over time. I mean, there's some genres that actually I feel like get a pass. I feel like mysteries very often get a pass, nowadays. Because a lot of old people like them. I think that's why. I think that's why mystery fiction and crime fiction sometimes can get a pass. But at the same time, think about Mickey Spillane. Actually, you think about Mickey Spillane, a lot of people don't remember who this guy was. This guy sold a lot of books, Mickey Spillane. He sold a ton of books. He was kind of almost the Stephen King of the 50s, I think. Because he was a great bestseller, and yet he was considered trash. A lot of people considered his work trash. Even other mystery writers considered Mickey Spillane to be kind of trashy. He has never achieved classic status, I don't think. But yeah, definitely a writer that was kind of considered trash. And if we're talking about trash, of course, Stephen King for the longest time was considered trash. A lot of people still consider Stephen King trash, to say nothing of books like this. The horror genre. Brian Lumley's Dead Speak. I think this one is from the 90s. It looks like it's from the 80s, but I think this one is from the 90s, right? Yeah, this is 1990. One of the great Necroscope novels. But you look at that and you just think, there are people out there who are automatically going to relegate this to just trash. And yet, this is the kind of thing I love. I love science fiction, fantasy, and horror. And one of my favorite authors, for example, is Edgar Rice Burroughs. Again, another author who for the longest time was just considered trash. This book, though, A Princess of Mars, this is a book club edition. But now this book is actually published as a Penguin Classic. So now it's classic trash. It's trash that's gone mainstream. It's classic trash. It's classic trash. And one of my very favorite authors of all time, H.P. Lovecraft, is another author like that. For decades, this guy was considered by many just to be, a crap writer. He just wrote trash. He wrote horror, for goodness sake. However, he's also one of the most influential American writers of all. And this is a Penguin Classics edition of The Call of Cthulhu. Great book, actually. So this is trash that has become a classic. More classic trash, which is a weird thing. So in a lot of ways, certain trashy fiction, if it hangs around long enough, it gets a little bit more respect. If only because of the obvious influence it has had on society. although a lot of people still consider this trash. Library of America did publish this as class as one of their classic volumes. Library of America has an H.P. Lovecraft volume, but you still do not have a Library of America volume of Edgar Rice Burroughs, for example, even though Edgar Rice Burroughs is one of the most influential American authors as well. You do not have any Library of America editions of Edgar Rice Burroughs because they just can't get past the fact that for so long this was trash. I'm going to amend that statement a bit because Library of America did publish a couple of volumes of Burroughs as special publications. This is a special publication of Tarzan of the Apes that they did in 2012, and they also did one of A Princess of Mars. But they were very clear that they're special publications. They're not part of their regular series. You will probably never see Burroughs in the regular Library of America series of books. You know, like this one from Raymond Chandler, a pulp writer. They just can't get past its trash status to accept it as significant writing. And this, you know, it continues to this day. The judginess of certain genres. There's somebody out there that considers this trash. I know people are screaming, "No, not my beloved Sanderson." Yeah, somebody considers this trash out there because it's genre, it's fantasy. You know, you should all be reading. Who is this? You should all be reading Jane Austen. You know, this is what you should be reading. You should be reading Jane Austen, not that. And I've heard this kind of thing all of my life, and I've dealt with this kind of judginess all my life because of what I read. I read comic books, for one thing. Oh my goodness, for the longest time, there was nothing worse than comic books. In the past decade or so, ever since Marvel has become successful in the movies, comic books have been getting a little bit more respect. A little bit. But for the longest time, it was just outright garbage. And if you were an adult who read comic books, what the hell was wrong with you? And certainly some of my reading choices, or most of my reading choices for the longest time, have been considered just garbage. You know, I like classics too. Classics of literature as well, of course. But most of what I've read over time has been considered just garbage. And I've come to the conclusion that that's okay. You know, I'm at the point in my life, and have been for quite a while, where I just don't care what people think of what I read. You know, it's okay. Whatever you read, whether it's, you know, some dopey romance book. I'm not a big fan of romance, but who cares what I think? It doesn't matter what I think. It matters what you think. If you as a reader, you know, should, of course, read whatever the hell you want, and just don't worry about what other people think. You know, if you like romance, read romance. If you like paranormal romance and that's your thing, read that. You can only read that if you want to. That's up to you. You know, you shouldn't have to worry about the judginess of others, because there will always be judgy readers. Always. There will always be people who read who read contemporary fiction or classic fiction, and if you read anything other than that, you know, if you read any kind of genre fiction at all, somebody, or probably a lot of somebody's, just think you're wasting your time. Why on earth would you read that? I've gotten that so many times in my life. Why on earth would you read that? Why would you read that? Because it's awesome. That's why. And that's why I'm so grateful to CriminOlly for creating an event like Garbogust or the Wasted Weekend that actually celebrates this kind of thing. It celebrates trashy books, whether it's men's adventure or whatever else, you know? Trash is awesome. Okay, I'll shut up now. I really, we're just wasting time because it's the wasted weekend. I will catch you next time.